October 4, 1973, Thursday morning, a general in Israel named Laskov, who served those days as the soldiers' ombudsman, is visiting an intelligence base in Sinai. Those days, Israel is in Sinai, 1973, and he visits the base. And he sees, he is accompanied by the commander of that unit, Brigadier General Yoel Ben Porat. Laskov, the ombudsman of the Israeli soldiers, walks around the base in Sinai, and he sees all the soldiers are with helmets. Although they are not combatants, they are intelligence people. They sit under the ground in a big bunker and try to understand what goes on the other side of the Suez Canal. So why should they have helmets on their heads? Some kind of abusing them. So he asks the commander of the unit, Yoel Ben Porat, what is this? Because they might complain that he orders them to wear the helmets for no reason. So Yoel answers him, we have information about a war which might erupt any minute. We don't know exactly when, but we have the signs of war. This was 2 days before the Yom Kippur war erupted, Thursday. On Shabbat, the war erupted. In this case, if a commander of a unit has an information, real information, about forthcoming attack on the base, he has the right to tell the soldiers to go out of the helmets in order to protect themselves from the strike. Not only has the right, he has the duty to make sure that they are protected, because he needs their heads and their lives, of course. In this case, after he told Laskov that he has information about the forthcoming war, the ombudsman agreed that this is a reasonable order to order the soldiers to wear helmets. If there is such an information, it's okay. 2 days later, the Yom Kippur War erupts. The lives of some 3,000 Israeli soldiers are sacrificed in order to save the state. But for us here, in this minute, the important part is that a general in the Israeli army, 2 days before the war, he does not know that a war is about to erupt. And this was something outrageous. Of course, it was not his job. He was an ombudsman. He was not a commander. He was not a leader of any force on the ground. He was the ombudsman. Yet, to be so totally oblivious of the events, of the information, of the preparations, this is outrageous. That even if he does not have any unit under his commandment, yet as a member of the chief of the staff of the army, I would suppose that a man in such a rank will know about the information about the forthcoming war, just like Ben Porat and other people in the staff. He was oblivious of the war. Ladies and gentlemen, we are today in the same situation. A war is there. Unfortunately, people are oblivious of what happens. The war is not only on Israel. The war is also here. A few days ago, a judge in Ohio allowed the American Taliban, the terrorist who was caught in Afghanistan, who was in almost isolation, so it doesn't educate others in the prison to be also terrorists, and he still sticks to his beliefs. In prison, as you might know, prisons are the biggest hubs of Islamism in this country, in addition to churches, to mosques. I wrote a whole article about mosques which disseminate jihadism in this country. So this man was allowed by a new verdict of a judge in Ohio to take part 5 times a day in prayers with all the Muslims in the jail. So far, he was allowed only to take part in prayer only on Friday noon in the main prayer of the week. So he is not exposed to others, so he cannot educate others how to be a jihadist as successful as he was. For some unknown reason, this judge decided that his rights to pray in jama'ah, means in tzibur, 5 times a day, and to spread his jihadism to others in the prison is more important than the security and the sustainability of this state. Because when they will release from jail, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to open NGOs to spread the idea of peace all over the world after they listen to him. Something very strange happens in this country. And it's not the only thing. I highly recommend that you read an article which I wrote with a friend, David Yerushalmi, another Chabadnik, about how jihadism and radicalism is disseminated in mosques in the United States of America. We checked stuff, materials which were collected in some 100 mosques all over the country, randomly chosen. And definitely the conclusion is that the United States of America is in a situation vis-a-vis this jihadism, just like where Europe was 15 years ago. The time lap, the time difference between Europe and here is some 15 years. Means what happens today here happened in Europe 15 years ago, when the Europeans submitted to the immigration and let those Islamists take over little by little everything in Europe. And as a conclusion, what will happen here in 15 years is what happens in Europe today. Because this is the time difference for this issue to cross the Atlantic. Israel is part of this, because Israel is the first bastion of modernity, of liberalism, of democracy, of human rights in the Middle East. And the war there is much more advanced because Israel is surrounded already by these jihadists. We see them in Egypt, the Muslim Brotherhood who took over the country. Their organization, the Muslim Brotherhood, which bred the Jama'a Islamiyya, the Jihad, means the Jihad in Egypt, whose commander is Ayman al-Zawahiri, today the commander of Al-Qaeda. So this is the line. Muslim Brotherhood, local jihadism, global jihadism. This is the process of radicalism, which is in advance in Egypt. It is already alive and kicking, and I would even say alive and killing in Syria, where who knows how many dozens of militias, Islamic militias, are fighting in Syria, in the war of Gog and Magog between the Sunni coalition of Turkey, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, maybe Egypt as well, who all support the Sunni population, against the Shia coalition, Iran, Iraq, and Hezbollah, who support the regime, who so far butchered some 70,000, more or less, 70,000 Syrians, only to keep Bashar stuck to his chair. These 70,000 should be added to some 50,000, which his father killed during his life. In Arabic, there is a saying, Khair khalaf li khair salaf, means a good son to a good father. In this case, I would say, Shar khalaf li shar salaf, means a bad son to a bad father. Bashar and Hafiz Assad. So altogether, some 120,000 Syrians were killed only to keep the Assad family stuck to the chair, compared to some 6,000 Syrians who sacrificed their lives through the years since 1948 until today in the wars against Israel. So who is the enemy? Israel or the Syrian regime? If Israel killed, or 6,000 of Syrians were killed in the wars against Israel, and 120,000 at least were killed by the regime, so who is the enemy, the real enemy of the Syrian people? So today, when people have to defend Israel, for example, say, hey, Israel is a problem. Excuse me? But I don't say that Israel is not a problem, but it's a minor problem compared to the Arab regimes, who are butchering their peoples much more than Israel. Another good example, the Syrian Air Force executed air raids during the last 2 years on the Syrian population. As we see the devastation in Syria, the destruction, the number of air raids which the Syrian army performed in Syria, inside Syria, during the last 2 years is higher than the number of air raids which the Syrian Air Force performed in 1940, in the wars against Israel, 1948, 67, 73, 82 combined. So who is the enemy of the Syrian Air Force? Israel or the Syrian people? This actually explains why the number of casualties inside Syria is much bigger than the casualties of the Israeli-Syrian wars. So today, when people accuse Israel for causing the problems in the Middle East, to a degree that whenever you find in the media peace process in the Middle East, it does not mean anything but the Israeli-Palestinian process. How about the peace between the Syrian people and their government, which is much more essential? But people don't regard it as kind of a peace which we should look for. Because peace in the Middle East is only Israel, because Israel implicitly is responsible for the war. This is why peace process regards Israel only. Why? Okay? Further, Libya, in the war of Gaddafi against his people, some 50,000 were killed. Again, who is the enemy of the Libyans? Israel? There were some Libyan troops in Lebanon in 1982, and some of them were killed in the war when Israel invaded Lebanon in 1982. So in 1982. So the Libyans could, maybe 10, 20 Libyans were killed by Israeli fire. 50,000 were killed by Gaddafi. So who is the problem in Libya? Israel or Gaddafi? And so forth. You can go all over the Middle East, and you can, if you just take the numbers, leave the slogans, go to the numbers, you will find that the real problem in the Middle East is not Israel. The real problem, the big problem. Of course, it is some problem. You know, I don't deny that some Arabs have problem with Israel. But to say that Israel is the problem in the Middle East, and therefore peace process in the Middle East should only be about Israel, this is a false presentation. And this is where we have to correct the picture, because we are not the problem. Israel is not the problem of the Middle East. However, Arabs do know it. The Arab man in the street knows the situation. He doesn't get carried away by the propaganda of the Arab regimes. And truth sometimes is being said by a joke. You know, jokes sometimes really express the feelings. There is a joke which is said in Arabic. It was said, I think, in 2006, more or less, about President George W. Bush, who wanted to find a justification for the war in Iraq, and he decided to send a delegation to look for weapons of mass destruction in the Middle East. In Arabic, you don't say weapons of mass destruction, you say weapons of total destruction. This is the term in Arabic. Aslihat damar al-shamil means comprehensive destruction or total destruction. It's better. So, according to the joke in Arabic, George W. Bush sent a delegation to the Arab world to look for weapons of total destruction. And he gave them a document which was written that they are allowed to search everywhere, to open every house, every storage, to dig wherever they like, in order to find weapons of total destruction. So they went to the Middle East, all the way from Morocco in the west, to Iraq in the east, from Syria in the north, to Yemen in the south. They looked everywhere, they searched everywhere, they opened every door, they dug everywhere, and they did not find any weapons of total destruction. After a year, they went back to Washington, D.C., to the Oval Office, and met with President George W. Bush. And he tells them, my dear delegation, I sent you to the Middle East to look for weapons of total destruction. What did you find? So they answer, dear President, we went all over the Middle East, we opened every door, we searched everywhere, we dug everywhere, and we did not find any weapons of total destruction. So he gets angry, says, what? Everybody says that Arabs have weapons of total destruction. Our intelligence tell me this. The Israelis are saying this. They have a lot of weapons of total destruction. What did you find? So they answer, total destruction. Now, this joke, as funny as it can sound, it is, of course, said in Arabic, in some kind of I would say, criticism, self-criticism. That we Arabs, we are the Arab world, are destroyed anyway by ourselves. So we don't need any weapons of total destruction because we are in a situation of total destruction. When Syrians today, as a continuation of this situation, kill themselves in masses, Iraqis are butchering one another in big numbers. When this thing, as we saw in Yemen, thousands of people were killed there, Bahrain, Libya, Egypt, of course. They don't need Israel as the enemy. The biggest enemy of the Islamic world is themselves. Bin Laden so far killed, I think 96% of the people whom he killed were Muslims. Means the Al-Qaeda and all kinds of branches of Al-Qaeda. Why? Because those Muslims who are not willing to become jihadists are the first target. So Israel is the problem. The jihadism is the problem. So this is, I would say, the first cornerstone of how Israel should be branded. It's not the problem. Guys, look at the mirror. The Arabs are much bigger problem of the Arab world than Israel. So before you deal with the small problem, deal with the big problem, the real problem, the serious problem, the much more bloody problem. Israel. So this should, in my view, should always be the answer to many things which Israel is being accused. You talk about Israel as apartheid state. Apartheid, when Arabs can buy apartments and houses wherever they like, even in Tel Aviv, when you don't divide between Jews and Arabs in hospitals, in schools, in universities. Half of my students are Arabs. In buses, every characteristic of apartheid, which was in South Africa in the days of the apartheid, different hospitals, different housings, different neighborhoods, different buses, different a ban on marriage, on interracial marriage, which was. Yes. You're right. Okay. The Arabs. Okay. There are other kinds of discrimination against Jews. Never mind. But what I'm saying is, by the law in Israel, there is nothing which resembled the apartheid situation in South Africa. So to start to claim that Israel is an apartheid state is first of all false presentation. Secondly, when you check what happens in the Arab world, you see the real apartheid. What is the situation of Copts in Egypt? There is not one single day without Copts being shot at, their houses burgled into, daughters are humiliated, and they are hit, or their businesses are burnt in Egypt. Not even one day passes without some case of this against the Copts. Discrimination, apartheid. what the situation of the Assyrians, the other sect of Christians in Iraq, the Maronites in Lebanon, women all over the Arab world, gays and lesbians, all these clear apartheid, which do not occur in Israel. Definitely, this is what should be done, what should be shown. I was invited a year ago to York University in Toronto to a discussion prior to the Israeli Apartheid Week. By the way, if you don't know, it started in York University in Toronto, like 10 or 11 years ago. So I had a meeting with the students, and the question was, what can be done with this Israel Apartheid Week? So one student said, well, we should show that Israel is not. Another one, we should not say anything, we should let it pass. The other one, we should publish all kinds of things about Israel. You know, and everyone has his idea. When it came to me, I said, guys, are you crazy? What do you think, that you will convince those thugs that Israel is not an apartheid state? This is an idea fix. They will not change their views about Israel. So, as we say in Hebrew, chaval al hazman. Pity on your time. Do something more effective. So I said, what can be more effective than this? I said, you should arrange an Arab Apartheid Month. Go to offense, not to defense. Because in defense, you might survive, maybe not. In an offense, you might win. And there's a big difference. To throw the ball to the court of the other side. To put them in defense. They should defend themselves why the Arab world is not an apartheid world. And I told them I can give you a stuff of every day of this month. What happens in the Arab world? You know what? The Egyptian workers, foreign workers in Jordan, they sleep in the streets because people would not rent them anything. Outrageous. Because they are Egyptian. Muslims in a Muslim country. Even the Islamic Brotherhood is not enough to convince the Jordanians to let them live in normal places. Not to mention how Muslim foreign workers from Malaysia, Indonesia, Bangladesh are being treated in the Gulf Emirates. You know, the big building wave in Dubai, for example, they have hundreds of thousands of foreign workers. Now, because of the weather in Dubai, which is most of the year 50 degrees centigrade in the shade, because it's the Gulf, some 10 foreign workers die every day. Around 10 of them are dying every day. Dehydration, diseases which the Dubais do not care of, they do not care about, and so forth. What happened with them? What happens with them? Do they care to send their corpses back to Indonesia or to Bangladesh? Nothing. Nobody knows what happens with them. They throw them to the dump. And they are Muslims in an Islamic country. Apartheid. Israel is an apartheid state. Okay, so first of all, we have to talk about facts. So those students in York University said, wow, we cannot arrange an Arab Apartheid Month. So I say, why? So he says, they will get upset. Excuse me? They will get upset? What do you say? So what will they do? So he said, they will run to the authorities and of the university. What the authorities will do? They will cancel it, the Arab Apartheid Month. So I said, what can you do then? I said, you can sue them for discrimination, that they let the Arabs arrange an Israeli Apartheid Week, and they don't let you arrange Arab Apartheid Week or month. Now, since they are afraid they will be sued for canceling one, not the other. They will cancel both. And mission accomplished. This is the way how to combat it. Now, you don't have to arrange it. Just talk about this. Publicize it. It will be enough. So they will run to the authorities to complain. And the authorities will sit down and will see that they cannot cancel one without the other. So they will cancel both. They didn't arrange it. They didn't announce it because they are afraid that the lecturers and the teachers will give them bad marks. Because if they will be, and one is Cohen, one is Levi, one is Mizrahi, one is, Jewish names. So definitely they will be found or marked by the teachers and the lecturers and the professors, and they will fail because they are arranging an Arab apartheid month. Because unfortunately the faculty also takes part in this Israel apartheid week. Another occasion of how to use facts, again, not as a defense, but as some kind of pushing the problem to the other court. And this should be the principle. I visited a year ago in Denver University, not far from here. And I was in a class, and one of the students asked me, when will Israel take out the illegal settlements in the West Bank? So I said, look, since we are in an academic institution, let's first define settlement. So he says, settlement, a place where indigenous people were living, foreigners came, kicked them out, built a new city or neighborhood, and they live there. This is a settlement. So I said, how long ago? So I said, regardless of time. So, okay, let's talk about Denver. A place which indigenous people were living, foreigners came, kicked them out, in this case exterminated them, and built a new city, neighborhood, regardless of time. So before we talk about Ariel and Eli and Shiloh, let's talk about Denver, and maybe New York as well, or Philadelphia, Los Angeles. All are the same settlements before you talk about them. And if you stick a pickaxe in the ground of Denver, how old would be the oldest American coin which you can find? So he says 200 years. And if you stick a pickaxe in Ariel or in Eli or in Shiloh, what will be, or how old will be the oldest Jewish coin which you can find there? So he Googles, he says, 3,000 years from the days of David and Solomon. So I said, so which settlement is less legitimate? Denver with 200 years or Eli with 3,000 years already there? So when we talk about time, definitely Denver is newer. So if any of them should be wiped out, it's Denver before Eli and before Ariel, isn't it? So, well, he felt rather embarrassed. And this actually, I didn't use a wisdom which I invented. All I did is using facts and nothing but the facts. But for this, we need two things, as Israelis and as Jews, because we are in the same boat. And you know what? Christians as well, because we are in the same boat with the Christians. We should use facts. The facts are that both Judaism and later Christianity were in the land of Israel centuries before the first Muslim looked at Israel from outside. Fact, nobody can deny it. They came no earlier than the year of 638 CE, some 16 centuries after Solomon built the temple in Jerusalem, after the second destruction of the second temple. So definitely Jews were there way before Muslims. So now they claim that this is their country? Since when? Why? The problem is, according to their discourse, Abraham was a Muslim, and Isaac was a Muslim, and so Jacob, and David, and Solomon, and Jesus Christ, and of course Johannes, and all those were Muslims, because Islam came to the world to replace both Judaism and Christianity, because there is a verse in the Quran which says, Inna dina inda Allah al-Islam, means the religion at Allah's is only Islam. So if anybody, anytime, believed in one God, he was a Muslim. What else could it be? If Judaism and Christianity are cancelled retroactively by Islam. So definitely all those are Muslims. And Solomon therefore built a mosque in Jerusalem. I describe it, after they occupied the geography of the Middle East, they occupied the history of the Middle East and the theology of the Middle East, and Islamized everything under their umbrella. And this is the problem, that the world today does not understand that the war is about Islamizing everything. The third jihad, I highly recommend to watch this movie. I think you can get it online. Describes actually what happens today. After the first jihad of the 7th and the 8th century, and the second jihad of the 15th century, which the Ottoman Empire and other empires expanded Islam even more, today we are under the third Islam. And here we have to understand what it means. Usually people look at Muslims who immigrate to other countries like Europe and here as some kind of people, good people, who look for a job, look for good living, run away from dictatorships, poverty, illiteracy, health problems, and total destruction in that world, and they come to have good life, dolce vita, to have new horizons, and to become something else. Yes, 99% of them are this. They come to have new future in new countries and to become Americans. Means not only to immigrate to America, they come and they leave behind them the culture of the homeland. Many of the Muslims who emigrated to here assimilated to the American melting pot, became American. They might go to mosque, but they consider themselves Americans in everything which they do and think. Many of them, and I don't deny it, and I cannot deny it. However, there are others who look at the immigration from totally different point of view. Immigration, usually as viewed by Westerners, is something which people do only, not the first choice. They prefer to live in their homeland where